Hi, I'm Iron Rainbow. This is Crash Course AP Euro. Throughout the year, we've covered a lot of topics, ranging from people being thrown out of windows to start a 30-year-long war, to this guy and his mad quest to prove to all of Europe that he wasn't actually that short, to the fact that science discovered that the sun actually revolves around the Earth, not the other way around. Although whether or not the Earth is actually round is still apparently up for debate. But there's one area of Europe that has barely been acknowledged outside of their relationship to more well-known countries. Who am I kidding? There hasn't been like one area that it applies to. According to our textbook, European history is basically like the merry adventures of England, France, and all of their friends. But today, because I can't focus on everything, we're going to focus on my favorite region to talk about, Scandinavia. Specifically, we're going to cover the events that took place in the region of Sweden, Norway, and Denmark during the 16th and 17th century. Let's start with the cultural changes that took place in Sweden during the 16th century. Although Wikipedia goes as far to say that the period between 1400 and 1600 produced little of note, especially during 1520 to 1600. When describing Sweden, in my opinion, that's basically Wikipedia proving teachers all around the world correct by being basically incorrect. During the 16th century, the Gothismus or Gothism movement took place, which was basically a look into the history of Sweden and its relationship to the northern tribe, the Goths or Geats. This was manifested in the 1554 publication of Johannes Magnus's History of All the Kings of the Goths and the Swedes, which was a chronology of over 200 Swedish kings. This paralleled the reinvigoration of history across Europe during the Renaissance, as it became a more applicable field of study. The sense of Swedish national pride that was developed as a result can later be seen during the 30 Years' War with the empire building of Gustavus Adolphus. To examine the development of the Reformation in Scandinavia, we must first delve into the realm of politics. Since the 14th century, Norway, Denmark, and Sweden were connected by the Union of Kalmar or Kalmar League ends 1523, and then Sweden is free. Gustavus Vasa, he was the best, and Sweden's Protestant at last. Which allowed each nation to function under its own laws, despite being united by a single monarch. In 1513, this monarch was Christian II of Denmark. When conflict over his rule erupted between Denmark and Sweden, Sweden was invaded, which sparked a revolution in opposition by the important figure of Gustavus Vasa. He was the best. In the end, when Denmark refused to calm down, the Kalmar Union was ended as Vasa became king of an independent Sweden in 1523. And the spread of the Reformation in Sweden began with Vasa's proliferation of the Swedish Lutheran Bible. Vasa, you may be interested to hear, was actually important to the previous reference work by Johannes Magnus, as it was his lineage that was used to foster a sense of Swedish national pride with the Gothicism movement. Later, in the 18th century, Vasa would be memorialized by a play written by the Swedish king at the time, which was part of the Swedish Enlightenment. Denmark too experienced the Reformation in the 16th century, carried out by a civil war. Although the Kalmar Union was at this point about as alive as dabbing yeet, Denmark still dominated Norway, and between 1534 and 1536, Denmark was embroiled in a war of succession known as the Count's War, as the kings Christian II and Christian III battled over which Christian would be the correct Christian to bring Christianity to Denmark. Christian III, a Protestant, prevailed, which allowed Lutheranism to be established in Denmark. For Norway, however, this led to it being declared an official dependency or province of Denmark. But the leadership of a Protestant king in Denmark led to an eventual reformation in Norway. Now, with all that boring religious stuff out of the way, let's go to the more fun stuff. The history of Norway. Yeah, the history of Norway is pretty boring. Sorry. The years between 1611 and 1648 are referred to as the Age of Greatness in Sweden, where despite them being a relatively small and sparsely populated country, Sweden was able to play an important role in European affairs. Coming off an indecisive defeat in the Kalmar War, Sweden then soon proved its dominance over Russia, a much larger country, in the Ingrian War between 1610 and 1617. Soon after, Sweden would win wars against Denmark, who had previously lost to, as well as other nations. In less boring terms, Sweden was on fire. Under the Vasa kings, Sweden's economy was much improved, and under the important ruler of Gustavus Adolphus, born him later, Sweden underwent extensive political and especially military reforms. Sweden's success was most significantly seen in the 30 Years' War, where under the ruler of Gustavus Adolphus, Sweden marched southward into the Holy Roman Empire to fight against the Catholic forces there, the Habsburgs. Winning nearly miraculous victories until Gustavus' death in 1632, Sweden was subsequently rewarded in the conclusion of the war in 1648 with territorial gains along the Baltic and North Seas. Turning back to Denmark, they also had some level of success in the 17th century. Returning to the Kalmar War, by 1613 the union of Denmark and Norway had proved their sovereignty against the overwhelmingly powerful Sweden. This success, however, did not come easy, or even close to Sweden's. In the 30 Years' War, Denmark and Norway's failures were put on display when their forces under Christian IV were crushed in the Battle of Lutter against the Catholic armies, and their participation in the war was soon ended. In terms of its renaissances, however, Denmark had Sweden beat, not because its works were more significant or impressive, but because it was home to a writer and mathematician named Ole Worm. Ole Worm, son of Willem Worm, who also went by Olaus Wormus, often wrote about runestones and also invented the tangent of sine, cosine, and tangent fame. I promise I'm not making this up. I'm not that funny. And I know it's probably pronounced like Ole Verme, but Ole Worm. And if Mr. Worm isn't enough to justify this journey, I don't know what is. And I hope from now on, Ole Worm will remind you just why we should have learned about Denmark, Norway, and Sweden during our AP Euro course. Good night, everybody!